My career job was resuscitating a 21-week-old who was he'd arrested. He was what we call asystolic, so he was a flatline.
Wow.
Now, I only got upset twice over all those years. Now, only over one was a really big traumatic case, and it wasn't the injuries that upset me. It was this guy. He was going to die on us. We knew that. His last words were, "How long is this going to take? I've got too much work to do." And that really upset me from the point of view that his last thoughts were work. Because I still remember an old-time, very good paramedic said to me, "Brad, you're not good at this. You're not a good paramedic until it all goes to shit and you put it all back together again."
Yo guys, and welcome back to the Taking It Easy podcast. Alongside me, I got my best mate, Pat Roach, and today we have an amazing guest, Brad Johnston. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, Brad. Thanks for having you on, Brad. Well, something a little bit different today. Brad, you've been a paramedic for, 25 years? You've just retired?
Yeah, no, for 32.
32 years. 32. Jesus.
Yep.
That's a big chunk.
And that's an intensive care paramedic as well?
Yeah, no, I joined the ambulance service in the late 80s, 89, early 89.
Jesus.
In those days, you were an ambulance officer,
right.
And then you aspired to become a paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in the early 2000s or mid 2010 or so,
mm-hmm.
people wanted to have a paramedic arrive at every job. So they changed the name of ambulance officers to paramedics and turned paramedics into intensive care paramedics.
Wow.
Oh,
so
wow.
There was a change in name. That said, though, the ambulance officer, when I was an ambulance officer, I wasn't carrying what is intense in essentially an ambulance officer now. They carry a lot more drugs and do a lot more things than we did when I joined.
When you started, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a shift in skill level a number
over the
of years
years
back. And yes, and there have been these generational changes that have occurred. But the buck stops at the intensive care paramedic on the majority of jobs. And that's basically what I did for about 25 years at that point. Yeah.
Wow. Brad, going back to young Brad growing up, was being a paramedic or an ambulance officer the aim always as a kid, or was it always kind of shifting?
No, Patrick, I just fell into it. I like
the
idea of 2 days, 2 days on, 2 nights on, 4 days off. Simple as that. I came from management.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the Manly area. Went to just a big state school, Manly Boys High, and just worked for a number of years in different jobs, and went into management and whatnot. And then there was a point of time when I was visiting my wife. She worked at North Shore Hospital, and I was standing in a queue in the cafeteria, and I bumped into a couple of guys who were doing their what we call level 5 or ICP training, which was at North Shore Hospital at that point in time. Because you spend time in theatres and whatnot and do a number of things like that. And I just got to talking to these guys, and they said, "Come and visit us. We work at Narrabeen Station."
Not far away. Yeah.
That I did. And I thought, well, this looks like fun. And basically it sort of, all my friends were aghast. Like, "What are you doing?" And look, 32 years later, it really is as simple as that. There was no planning in it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did. It ended up being a wild ride.
So were you just out of school at that time, just finished at Manly Boys, or were you
No. I joined the job when I was 28.
Oh wow, so it was a bit later, unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I think this is something that I have that troubles me at times, where I can count on one hand how many guys that I joined with have essentially left the job, who I literally joined with. But now the turnover is a lot greater. And I do think that one of the problems is that people are joining this job way too young. I think you've got to be a reasonably mature person to be able to cope with situations that you're involved in. I mean,
it's quite I don't want to say traumatizing, but it is very intense.
Well, it is.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well,
you go in preparing that is what I'm saying. You go in knowing that. But if you're young, I mean, you might expect something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you're going to look at it with rose-colored glasses a little bit more. But that said, you can't prepare for what you eventually get involved with. I remember coming out of our training facility, and I didn't know anything. In retrospect, I mean, and this is something too that I was taught when I first came out as an amber. I was taught by guys who were general duty. I'll call it we were known as GDs and paramedics, so general duties or paramedics. Yeah. So I was taught by general duties guys who had been on the road for 30, 40 years. So they taught me how to do things, not the way they did in school necessarily, but how things were done. And they had a lot of experience. They had a wealth of knowledge, whereas the kids these days, unluckily, are being trained by kids again who don't have the same depth of experience. So it's a very difficult thing to try and describe. Until you've come out of school and you've had a couple of years under your belt and you're going to things on a regular basis, it's a very difficult thing to try and describe.
Yeah. So you think, those years after school, going into the regular workforce kind of helped shape and mature you as a person before you went into Ambulance New South Wales?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I travel around the world, and I met and married my wife over in London by that time, and we'd been around. I mean, and I think people know that. It happens not on a regularly enough that you've got to hug somebody because their husband's passed away right in front of them. And you things like that until you've experienced them and you've got recognition of what's going on, you can't do that when you're 20.
No way.
19.
No way. Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing, and it's difficult for you as a person as well. I mean, and then because that job, just think about this: you can do it. You could do a couple of those in one day, type of thing. But don't forget, you do that, and then you come out the car, you're doing your paperwork and whatnot. These days, you don't get a chance to have a break at all. They'll have another job lined up for you. So you go from one to the other, to the next, to the next, to the next, all day long. That takes its toll.
Yeah, mentally.
I was about to say, because I think that the emotional and mentally draining and traumatic instances that especially paramedics nowadays have, like you have these shows on television like Ambulance New South Wales and, Australia.
Never seen it.
London. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It just goes to show that there's so many, first of all, false calls and calls that, I'm starving to death. Can you drop my food off to me? Or like, there's just kind of like that ridiculous stuff, that really take away the need for ambulance with real cases, I guess.
Yeah, look, that's always going to be there. I'll be honest. I don't think I've ever actually been to one of those ridiculous ones. I hear about them on a regular basis, but I don't think I've ever gone to one, and I reckon they'd get a bit of a serve from me. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
So, look, those sorts of things are brought up on a regular basis. I mean, we don't get many hoaxes anymore. We used to have hoaxes a lot, but they brought in a thing. They've got this technology in the control room called CLI, which is the call line identification system, and they can track calls down. If the call isn't coming from the exact address, then they go back to it and they double check that. And mobiles, I don't know whether or not mobiles fit into that system as well, but we used to go to hoaxes on a regular basis. These days, I hadn't been to one for many, many years. You'd have a spike of them every school holiday. That no longer exists. So these ridiculous ones, though, I to be honest, I've never actually been to one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, working in ICP for what, like 32 years, how has that changed over time, like in terms of the technology and stuff like that? Has it been, like drastic or not really?
Well, yeah, look, as an ICP, you carry we all ambulance officers, paramedics, whatever, all carry a number of drugs. We carry quite a few more as an ICP. One of the things we've shifted towards a sedation. We carry a lot of sedatives. I'm not now. I'm not a paramedic anymore. But we'll talk as if I am.
Yeah.
The level of sedation that we were carrying, it was totally different to the beginning. Some of these drugs are really powerful, and that's the thing that worries me about the younger people who have got some of these drugs, is that they can be quite dangerous. And
sure.
Once a drug's in,
you can't.
Yeah, once a drug's in, you can't get it back out. I remember an old paramedic saying to me, think about 4 or 5 ways you can get round not giving it, and then if you have to give it, give it. You know what I mean? Just quick, if you can just run through things quickly, try not to give a couple of these drugs if you can, but if you have to, you have to, and that's it. Done. You make that decision. Your thought process is rather quick, and then you make that decision and you stand by what you're about to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're on scene like that, do you have to consult anyone else, or can you make that decision entirely based on what one superior? You have to, be like, oh, this is what they're dealing with. Am I allowed to give them this drug, or is it just in the spur of the moment? Good
question. Okay. What happens in America, they're in touch with emergency department, speaking to an A&E doctor to give them authorization to give drugs. In Australia, we don't. We follow our own protocols and pharmacologies, and we make all our own decisions. The only thing we might do occasionally, if we have to go way outside our protocols, I might consult maybe one of the doctors on the helicopter. I could ring Bankstown and speak to the air base. But if you do change things, you can put in a thing called a variation of practice, and you've got to be able to give reason for changing why you did things in a different way. But going way over drug doses and things, say sedating somebody, if you're not getting any joy, you maybe ring them, or if you can't stop a heroin overdose and you want to give more naloxone. We used to give a lot more what's called naloxone. It's otherwise known as Narcan on the street. We used to give huge amounts of Narcan to heroin overdoses when I worked in the city in the early days. Yeah. These days they want you to use a lot less and then get these people to hospital. Personally, I don't agree with it. I think what you want to do is dose them right up, because it does nothing else but reverse heroin, or reverse an opiate. So it's a numbers game. If they've got 100 units of heroin on board, you've got to give them, in my books, 200 units of naloxone to reverse that and keep it reversed. What they want us to do now, if they've got 100 on board, they want us to give, say, 20 units of naloxone.
Do the rest of the hospital.
What that means is and go to hospital, and that means you've got a groggy junkie in the car.
Yeah.
I'd rather see them sober as a judge, and off they go.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because they do. They come up. Sometimes they come up swinging.
They would.
Isn't that one of the major problems for people who are high on drugs or ice is the threat that they hold to ambulance personnel and the police having to be involved? Yeah,
I mean I disarmed 2 people in the last few months of the job.
Wow.
In the back of the car.
Wow.
Yeah, in the back of the car, and then we had police hold them down, and we had to sedate them.
These like knives or like what? What were they holding? Wow.
Knives.
Wow.
So, and it's in a really close personal space. It's not like you're in a room or anything. You're in the back of the car. Yeah,
exactly.
So these sorts of things are getting more and more prolific. And look, I don't think it's purely drugs. I think it's just another what I call generational change, where people have no problem taking a bit of a pop at somebody in uniform.
Very true.
It got to the stage where I'd be thinking, look, I'm 60. I want to get home and have dinner with my wife, with all my teeth in my mouth. These sorts of injuries will last for a long, long time if you get one.
For sure.
I think we've been pretty lucky so far, but something bad will happen at some stage.
Yeah. What's the sort of like common occurrence that you'd have to attend to, Brad? Like, I know obviously in ICP, I'm sure you got tons of different instances, but would it be like drug overdoses or what would it be?
No, the majority of our work is cardiac related.
Okay.
I used to generalize and say our job fell into 3 categories, which I called GOS, which was gravity, old age, and stupidity. People that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
People fall over, they fall off things, they fall off roofs, they fall over their own feet.
Yeah.
Old age, that's a given.
Injury.
Old age have all sorts of issues, whether it's cardiac related,
respiratory related,
strokes.
They fall all the time. Strokes, you name it. And then there's stupidity. So most things can fall into any of that. If you really think about any job that we would go to, it'd be that. Look, there are the genuine ones, like someone has a heart attack, what we call an MI, a myocardial infarction. There are certain things that are just purely genuine, but I reckon 95% fall into GOS.
Okay.
Yeah. that's just my opinion.
And would you say for certain like age groups, would there be, one incident or one thing that is like a common occurrence for different sorts of age groups? Like say, 16 to 22 drug overdoses or older strokes, blah, 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 that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Friday night.
Big Friday nights.
Big Friday night. Friday night was always Friday night. Saturday night was a little bit calmer. Friday night was let your hair down night. Don't forget, I worked at Balgala for a lot of years, so therefore I covered the Manly area. So Manly has 3 really big pubs that are really crowded and really drunk. And before we never went back to the station on Friday night. We used to just stay around Manly and hang around because we were only going to get back down there in 5 minutes.
Exactly. It was inevitable.
Yeah, it was inevitable. I mean, they developed a big police presence down in Manly, which was good, which there was a bit of a shift towards sorting out bouncers who used to throw people down steps. And
oh my God.
Mate. Some of the beatings we went to were just like, and we didn't bypass smaller hospitals for trauma centres then. So these days you don't go to when Manly doesn't exist anymore, it's now Northern Beaches. But for things like head injuries, we would just go up to Manly. We wouldn't go. We would then they had trauma centres and started centralising facilities, which makes sense. I get that. Places like North Shore became the places that we'd go all the way over to with serious injuries.
Okay.
I mean, they can be a haul. It's not round the corner, and look, we don't just. I think you guys are finding out. We just don't. The way we're portrayed on television is. I love that statement. A patient was transported to hospital. It's like, okay. It sounds like we sat them in the back seat and looked at them.
No, you didn't.
So it's a long way from Manly. With a serious head injury. Like in an open head. To North Shore. And like on a Saturday afternoon, Military Road's considered to be the 7th worst road in Australasia. So it's a long way.
And it's a long trip as well. Road. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you have to? So you weren't covering just the Northern Beaches. You were covering like the whole like North Shore, like to the beaches, kind of.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we these days they're stretched to the limit. I mean, I've heard of some ridiculous runs. Like this is North Shore Hospital to Palm Beach for an arrest. I mean, that person's dead. It's as simple as that. Manly to Palm Beach, that person's dead. DY to Palm Beach, that person's dead. How long can you hold your breath?
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, not long.
Because you think that it would change over time, that it would be covered by smaller distances or whatever. You see Ambos driving 30, 40 plus minutes to an incident.
Yeah.
That's by the time you get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole
and
situation.
apart from that, the whole situation's changed. I mean, you get abused.
And it's not your fault.
Where were you?
You're doing your job.
Well, I mean, is that one of the things? Because I know that with lights and sirens, like, can Ambos just put that at any point? Like, if there's traffic, I'm gonna chuck the lights and sirens on, or does it have to be in a certain incident where you're allowed to use those lights and sirens?
Okay, well, jobs are classified. And it's like it's they've got set criteria, but a 1A is generally a cardiac arrest, or where you've got multiple agencies going to it. 1Bs are serious injuries, unconscious. 1Cs are considered to be serious enough to be able to use sirens. So anything that starts with a 1, we put our sirens on generally to get to them. Anything like, then you've got 2As, 2Bs, 2C, whatever. They don't get sirens used to go to them unless you query it and go, I want this upgraded, and then you'll switch your sirens on. Going to the hospital, you'll know that someone's crook if you look at a car and there's only the guy who's driving, he's got sirens on. That means that whoever's in the back is crook. So we use them a lot to get to jobs, but we use them sparingly, or when only necessary, to use them to get to hospital.
Okay.
So if you see a pair of guys in the front, you've got your treating officer in the passenger seat, you've got your guy who's driving in the driver's seat. So you see those two in the front, they're going to a job. If the guy's just driving on his own, that means whoever's in the back is crook with the sirens on.
Okay.
So what we used to do on a car was, because you used to do 2 days, 2 nights, and then your days off. You used to drive on your first day, and then your partner was treating. You treated on your second day, then you treated on your first night, and then you drove on your second night. And
you're with two other paramedics, is that right?
No, one.
So it's only two of you.
In pairs.
You're in pairs. Okay.
Oh, I wish 3. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Anything that basically they the control room, when a call comes through, they take information and whatnot, and what they glean from that, they classify jobs. And then they say you're on station. You say you've got 2 cars on station. Say Balgala, we had an intensive care and we had a general duties car. So if we were both on station, which is pretty rare these days, if say a 1A came in, both, and it was close by, say we weren't, as an IC car, backing up a car from Narrabeen for whatever reason, if it was in Manly, both cars would respond to that job as an arrest or a drowning or whatever the case may be. So then if it was a 1B, which was, say, an unconscious stroke or something, we would go to it on our own. If we needed help to load or whatever the case may be, then we'd call for backup. Or they went to a job which was classified as a 2A and went to it, and the person was really crook, they might call us for backup for more intervention, whatever.
Right.
So any one class job is lights and sirens to the job, whether or not it ends up being really crook or it is. And the same with a class 2 job. You go to it slowly. If you look at it and think, look, I don't like the look of this. And it can just be from an inconvenience point of view, or just a general feeling about a job. An old person who's fallen in a driveway, sounds like they've got a broken hip. It's getting dark. It doesn't classify as a lights and sirens job, but you think, that person's in pain. It's getting cold. The people who are there aren't going to be happy. Let's get there a bit quicker. We use sirens so much that using sirens from an ambulance point of view is neither here nor there. Yeah, and we're not going to break any speed records. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go to a kid hit by a car. Well, then you bust your boiler. But if you use lights and sirens just to get the traffic out of the way a bit more,
exactly,
it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Brad, when you're on station and you get a call, what's like the procedure following that? So obviously somebody's driving and somebody's in the back. When somebody's in the back and you're following, let's say, a 1A, are they preparing all the meds and stuff like that?
No, it's all done there.
Okay. Yeah.
So we get a job. We just go down to the car. So you answer the phone. He says, you've got a code 2 or a 1A. Code 2 is an arrest in Manly.
Mm-hmm.
Down to the car. It's on the screen in the front of the car. Work out where it is quickly. You're sort of like doing two things at once.
Mm-hmm.
You mobilize as quickly as possible. And you look, if it sounds unusual, if it's say it's a pediatric arrest, you're doing your drug calculations on the way, and you're asking questions on the radio as to, let's really specify the age so that you're doing drug calculations.
So it's as quick as possible.
Yeah, everything's done ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the job. Everything's very fluid.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, you've got to be able to adapt and do things in a fluid way. And the longer you've been at it, the better you become at those sorts of things. And other things don't distract you.
Yeah.
It just comes with experience.
Of course, over the years.
And I mean, when we're talking about, say, like a big case or even a death or big cardiac arrest, how have you or ambos in general, how do you like come home and finish a shift and kind of like detox and de-stress about like a whole situation?
Oh, I don't know about detox. I think it's the other way around now. But look, I've always been lucky. Heather, my wife, being a really experienced RN, she's been through the healthcare mill. So I was always able to talk to her about anything I'd ever been involved with. And also not having kids. I was able to cope with night shifts pretty well. So if you do a big night shift, you just get home and go to bed. Whereas some guys have got to come home, they've got to go to nippers.
That's true.
It's sort of like that'd be very difficult. You'd be like a zombie. So I was always able to let the job just take its course.
Of course.
With me.
Yeah.
I mean, I never really got to. I only got upset twice over all those years, and they were only over. One was a really big traumatic case, and it wasn't the injuries that upset me. It was this guy. He was going to die on us. We knew that. And his last words were, "How long is this going to take? I've got too much work to do." And that really upset me from the point of view that his last thoughts were work.
Yeah.
Not family.
This guy had 99% full thickness burns. He was going to die.
Oh shit.
Wow.
I just remember him looking at me saying, we were in the hospital at that point. And he said, "How long is this going to take?" And he said, "Well, I've got too much work on." I thought, "Oh, mate, really?" That upset me only because of his sort of, he didn't understand the gravity of the situation because he had no pain. Anyway, and then another one, I just got upset because this guy had left his wife in a nursing home, and we were doing another job in there, and this lady was crying, and I just started talking to her, and she'd been left in this nursing home, and she was only in her 30s, and she had multiple sclerosis. Yeah. And I thought, this is so wrong. But that was only early in the piece. I mean, I was still coming to grips with everything at that point. But,
of course. Yeah. So Brad, with that being said, I know obviously you got into being an ambo a little bit later in your life when you were more mature, but did you find that over the time you adapted to these situations a little bit better and mentally dealt with it better?
I hope so. I think I have, but I've seen a lot of people get really bent out of shape because of the job. We've got one of the highest suicide rates of any job.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, without a doubt. And look, everyone has a different way of coping with this one. And I just think I was just one of the lucky ones who didn't have an issue. I've come out of it physically pretty well. I've got a bit of a dodgy back, And I think mentally, I think I'm okay. It's funnily you say, I've been dreaming a lot about work in the last few months. Not bad dreams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of faces of guys I've known for a lot of years, and they're definitely work related. I can't pin it down to anything. I'm not waking up going, ugh. It's just I've just had dreams through the night about different things. And not dredging up bad things.
Not bad things.
Just I just know that they've been semi-work related. And I'll be honest, I've never had work-related dreams when I was working.
It's interesting.
Oh wow,
it
is.
Yeah,
who knows?
Who does know? But do you reckon, being a intensive care paramedic for as long as you have been, has that given you a little bit more appreciation for the people in your life and your wife and your family and stuff like that, seeing like all these traumatic instances and everything like that?
It's pretty fragile.
Yeah,
for sure.
To see how life can just be taken
in a trice, mate. In a trice. I think you may know that I've got a bit of a health issue, but everything's cool there. And if you've got to be confronted by it, I think at times. I learned something. One of the early in the early piece when I was crook, and I was at North Shore Hospital one night, and I remember I was freaking out, and an experienced nurse said to me, she said, "So just everything's okay." She said, I remember her saying to it, "You are safe. We will look after you," and it was always something that I tried to help people with in the back of our cars. If you meet someone's eyes and you say that to them, you are safe, you will be okay, we are going to look after you. You can actually watch someone physically relax. There's all the drugs, there's all the sedatives, there's all the analgesia that we can give, and all the definitive things that we can do, but just calming someone down and getting their trust is very, very important.
For sure.
So you would do that as well as an ambo? Like if you're on the back, you would really try to, because I'd imagine, a lot of people are panicking if they've had those.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's really important. And look, that gets better with experience as well, because don't forget, I mean, there are times when we go to certain jobs and your heart's in your mouth.
Would be.
You know what I mean? You've got to try and one of the things that takes a long time to be good at is being able to turn up at a really big job and just stop and take 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, taking it all in and not getting distracted by the screaming and whatever from other people who are panicking, so that you can get a good handle on really what's taking place and know what direction to go in to get everything under control, because
100%.
That's the hardest thing. That's the one thing that we do is control these situations. When panic sets in, logic goes out the window.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly right.
So go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I know in a lot of instances, where I've had injuries or friends had injuries, when you have bystanders or their friends being like, "Oh my God, that's so bad. I can see your bone. I can, see the inside of your leg." It just makes it so much worse. Whereas in, if there's a situation, you're calm and collected about it, then the person's going to relax about their whole situation and what they're in, I guess.
Plenty of people have got PhDs in bystanding, right? The bystanders are always a bit of a pain in the neck. Look, the hardest thing to control at a job is when you've got an injured child and you've got a parent there. That's the one thing you've got to try and calm down, is that parent.
The parent.
So that you can get some clarity and bring a little bit of zen to the job. I was right into getting jobs calm. To me, once you'd achieve that and you could work your way through things, things became a lot easier to maintain.
So is that even when, because I know for most humans it's just like a natural instinct, when you see a pretty horrific injury, you think, "Oh my God, this is quite bad." Like how would you just take a little bit of time to relax and be like, "Okay, I've got a job to do. This does look pretty shit, but I got to relax."
Well, the bigger the job, the quieter I would get.
Okay.
I would get cranky and annoyed when we'd get called to something insignificant. Just like, what? Sorry, can you just translate that into adult for me? I would be, that'd annoy me. But if we had a big job, well, that's when you really put your thinking cap on, and that's when I get a bit quiet. And I think that's the only way to do it. We have a term for guys who really weren't good at this job, and they're flappers. They flap a bit, flap about, no, or disappear in the middle of a job. Like, where's John? You know what I mean? So, because everybody's different.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Not every ambo wears a cape. A lot of them think they do, but it's. I always found it was the quiet guys were always the dependable guys. They'd always be behind you on a biggie, or next to you on a big job. The ambulance service has a lot what I call stars who go up real quick, and hate to say it, but they end up in Roselle. I mean, to me, the guys who were dependable, who were 30 years on the road. I still believe that's our job. I think that's the important aspect of what we do, as guys with 30 years experience on the road.
For sure.
And have got recognition of what they're looking at. That's one of the other important things is the longer you are on the road, the more you recognize what's going on in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to understand what you're looking at. There are so many things that can mimic other things that you've got to be able to see through things to really get clarity on what direction to go. There's a number of drugs that you can give for certain things that they're not going to. It's not going to help.
Okay. So you think with working in IC, it's one of those things that just comes with experience.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah.
I mean, people are doing IC courses a lot faster than we did it. You had to. You were expected to have a good 8-9 years up your sleeve before you went and did an IC course when I did it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Doing it up. Yeah, now they're doing it after 3 or 4 years.
Jesus.
Yeah. And to me, it's a little bit quick. Look, what am I to say? That they've done a degree.
That's true.
Now, whether or not that has much bearing on it, in my experience, I don't know. I agree. I agree with the degree. I think it's important for us as a professional group to have it. Again, it's a generational change. I was one of the lucky last to not require a degree. You know what I mean? In my life. These days, everything requires a degree.
But I mean, then you also have people who are just like, they'll do their degree, they'll get top of their uni class, and they're book smart, and they know everything about every medicine, blah blah blah. But they don't have that personal experience with dealing with a case, I guess.
Sure. That's going to be the same all the way across. That's the same in anything. So as I said, the more experience you've got, the better you are at recognition of what you're actually dealing with. So they can't. I mean, everyone has to do a degree now. I think. I don't think anyone can not do a degree. So, so they're going to get better at it, but it just takes time to really be the one that everyone turns to and says those 7 single syllable words is, what do you want me to do?
So would you say that your generation is, would you say, the better of the paramedics nowadays?
Battle of the generations.
Battle of the
but the majority of guys who are my age who are ICPs are burnt out. So look, that's a hard one, Rowan. Things have changed pretty rapidly, and I would say that 90% of people now doing IC courses have got degrees. There aren't too many people who went through my system now finally doing an ICP course. So, that's a difficult one.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. Now, Brad, I'm going to ask you a bit more of a serious question here. So obviously you were talking about, ambulance people working in as an ambo having like the highest rates of suicide. Now, do you feel as though ambulance drivers deserve more respect? Because I never ever knew that stat that was actually the case, but it makes sense. You guys are exposed to the most traumatizing things that humans can really ever see.
Even with pay as well, like paramedics are really not getting paid that much either to do the jobs that they're doing and the hours they're working.
Oh, I agree and I disagree there. Now, pay, look, I've always thought, mate, look, our base rate is about the same as an RN. It's when you add all your penalties and things onto it and overtime and stuff. I think it's a pretty decent wicket. But then again, I'm not compared to highly paid private jobs. But yeah, look, we're comfortable. Now, Patrick, what was the beginning of your?
Yeah, so you were saying that ambos have like the highest rate of suicide, like very, very high.
Yep.
Do you feel like they deserve more respect, like the way our people portray them? Like, I mean, I never knew that was the actual case.
Yep. Okay. Look, to me, there are 3 emergency services, and I always said this, that I would, when I finally retire, what I would get, I'd go to my grave thinking is that one of those emergency services, and I'm not going to say which one it is, you'll be able to figure this out very quickly. Got a lot of kudos for not doing a lot in my books. Now there's us and the police have got a really hard job.
Yeah, definitely.
So I put that, get it now?
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah. So that's a pretty cushy number for those guys who work in that other one. But police and us have got an extremely high rate of being medically discharged and or topping themselves. So the police deal with horrible people, I would say 90% of the time.
And they get abused.
We deal with and they're dealing with people who have no respect for anybody.
Exactly.
We would go to the police station on a regular basis for dealing with all sorts of things, and we would deal with that sort of person. I would give it maybe 10-15% of the time, whereas police deal with them, say, 90% of the time. That's their job. So that would be soul destroying. And that takes its toll on a lot of police. I know a lot of police. I know a lot of police who are bent right out of shape. And it comes with the territory, and it's the same with ours. Yeah,
for sure.
You couldn't not go into dealing or doing our job thinking, we're just going to be sitting down having a nice chat to people.
Definitely
it's
not.
How it works.
No.
I mean, we're thrown into things that give you nightmares.
Yeah. And also, Brad, like when you're on, like, I don't know, at the station and everything's all chilled out, and then you get a call, how do you kind of switch from, because it's such a fast-paced job, what you do, how do you switch from just like, sitting down or doing whatever and then, oh shit, we've got to be here and as soon as we can and switch on so quickly? How'd you do that over the years?
It's like, shit, if you're watching the footy, you try and catch it on their telly.
2 minutes to go.
It's always 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, always.
What are you guys doing today? Oh, we were only watching the grand final. What are you doing?
Far out. You wouldn't want to be caught into a bad job there.
I'll tell you what got me in the end. The hardest thing that I found was night shift, and getting woken up at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
You've had your head down for maybe an hour, and that was getting worse and worse because the pressure on the ambulance service has gotten so great that we were out doing work all the time. Now we were meant to be there for backing cars up for big jobs. That's the idea behind having an IC car. But we ended up stepping into the breach because the GDs were that busy that they couldn't cover that workload. So so you'd be up all night doing blah blah blah, and then you'd then be up. Then you're up for something horrendous at 4:30 or 5 in the morning after having an hour's sleep or something, getting your head down finally, having a break. I found that was getting more difficult.
Night shift.
Yeah, it was my age was starting to show.
Yeah.
I am now catching up on 10 years lost sleep.
Wow.
That's what I'm doing in retirement. I now sleep for 10 hours, 11 hours. No problem. I was always a good sleeper. But that sleep was all over the shop. I mean, I think our penalty rates were incorrect. How the penalty rates worked: day shift on Monday to Friday, you were on a flat rate. Now there are all sorts of other penalties in there, but essentially your flat rate was Monday to Friday, day shift.
Day shift.
Now when you worked night shift, Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you were paid a loading of 15% on top of your standard rate. Come midnight on Friday night, you converted then to Saturday rate. So Saturday rate went from Friday midnight till Saturday midnight, and you were paid 50% loading on any of the hours that you worked in there.
Shit.
And then Saturday midnight till Sunday midnight, you were paid a 75% loading on your flat rate. Okay. Personally, I think that what it should have been was night shift should have been 50% all the way across the board. And lesser rates for a day shift on Saturday and Sunday to make up for that.
Was the rationale behind it that there's less calls on Monday to Friday and more calls on Saturday to Sunday? What's the rationale there?
This is just a traditional thing where you get paid penalty rates for weekends. To me, what took the greatest toll and what caused the most antisocial behavior was the fact that you were on night shift. Didn't matter what night you were on. It just excluded you from what you were doing with friends or whatever, sport. I could never, couldn't go to training and things. I'd have to give up playing baseball or whatever because of, my job, it rotated. So that made it difficult anyway. And I'll explain that to you in a sec. But I just felt that night shift was the thing that had most impact on you socially and health-wise. And I think that was worth more than Sunday day shift. I'm not a church goer, so working on the Sabbath meant nothing to me. Well, it didn't. That's the reality of it. And Saturday was the same. Saturday day shift, I think Monday night shift took more of a toll on me than Saturday day shift. So I just think that's a little bit skew-if. But also from a working hours point of view, we worked a 9-day week. So how it worked was 2 days, 2 nights, 5 off, which meant that you go forward 2 days each week. So if one week I worked Monday, Tuesday day, Wednesday, Thursday night, the following week I would work Wednesday, Thursday day, Friday, Saturday night.
It's always switching.
So you went forward. You just went forward 2 days each working week. And how it worked was over a 10-week roster, you worked 380 hours of rostered hours, which meant that you worked a 38-hour week.
Wow.
Quite simple. Simple. So every fortnight you got paid 76 hours of flat rate, and your penalties were just tacked onto that.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
So what would you? So not too challenging to work out, I guess.
No, not at all.
No.
None of my friends could ever figure it out. Why can't you come to the barbecue on Saturday afternoon? I'm working. What?
On a Saturday? What?
On a Saturday?
Yep.
What are you doing? So this was. I don't know why they had difficulty with this, but that was the way it was.
So, what would you describe as being one of your most challenging jobs that you've had to do as a paramedic in your career? Or has there been one most memorable one that you've had to work?
We've all got a career job. My career job was resuscitating a 21-week-old who was he'd arrested. He was what we call asystolic, so he was a flatline.
Wow.
Now this little kitty had a what we call a ventricular. He had a ventricular tumor, had a tumor in his heart that they were waiting for him to get older before they did cardiac surgery on him. So it was without a doubt my career job to go to be able to resuscitate a 21-week-old. And we remember this little kid turned into what we call a multi-rhythm arrest. So a lot of drugs. We defibrillated this little fella 6 times on scene. I still remember bringing him outside of the house on a boogie board. And we did the job on the dining room table. My partner was at the head, and he what we called intubated him, and we put a bone punch in to give the drugs through his bones, because you can't find a vein on a 21-week-old who's asystole.
No way. Yeah.
So you put an intraosseous punch in. So you drive a needle into the bone. Look, the last I heard was he'd met all these milestones at something like 10 years old, and it was a big job. But that was without a doubt my career job. I've got a million other memorable jobs, but that was the one thing.
It's a 21 week, like, you know what I mean?
It was the size of a doll.
Exactly. So, exactly. Yeah.
So everything, all the calculations were done with a calculator at the dinner table. I remember we turned up and there was a crew doing CPR on this little bub in this room, and I remember saying, because I remember it was only a month or two before we'd done a kiddie drowning in Mossman, and I remember doing the job, and we did it on the floor on a rug, and I remember thinking, this is really difficult. Being scrabbling around on the floor, doing things like we would do at a normal arrest, but they're a different thing. A pediatric arrest, they're very emotional. But anyway, I remember thinking we should do this on the dining room table. Then I thought, no, it was too obscene to think. And then we turned up at this other job, and I thought, no, I have to do this at the dining room table. So it made sense. And I said to these guys, I said, when I say, yeah, I want you to bring him up and put him up on this table, his head on that side and feet at this side. And we had everything laid out, ready to go. And it all went quite smoothly. It got out of control a bit, and then we got it back in control. And that's the hardest thing as an intensive care paramedic, is because you turn up at jobs that are out of control.
So the parents were going crazy. Were they like, everything was?
I remember saying to mum, you have to stand over there. You have to be quiet. We have to be able to think. Yeah. And she did. I was firing rapid fire questions at her, and she kept her head together. It was all a matter of control. And I think I'll go back to what I said before, to be able to do things calmly, and keep things under control. Because I still remember an old-time, very good paramedic said to me, Brad, you're not good at this. You're not a good paramedic until it all goes to shit and you put it all back together again. Because they do quite often fall apart, and you've got to be able to be the one who puts it back together, or you and your partner.
And that comes with staying calm. You got to stay calm.
That's a big part of it. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Keep it on track. You've got to keep it on track. And that's something I'm finding a bit. That was something I was finding a bit difficult. At the end, was a lot of these young guys, they'd be waiting for me, and I'd be going, "Come on, boys, you should be on the move."
Yeah.
Some people, what the best drug you can give them is diesel. Get them going, and do it all in the back. I mean, I was famous for doing it on the wing, getting them in the back, and doing stuff on the move. I think that's one of the most important things we can do. Our main priority was pain relief. Get everything calm, pain relief. If you have to do something definitive, you do it, but you get them on the move. The place a lot of people need to be is in hospital.
Hospital. Yeah.
So that's where they've got everything at their
disposal. Yeah.
Exactly
right. So would you say, like, that's been your motivation, and passion for 32 years in the services, to just be able to help people?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I've always considered, Rowan, this job, all of us, I think, would consider that what we do is a useful job.
God's word.
I think it's
saving
a really
lives.
useful job. It doesn't revolve around making money. It doesn't revolve around kudos or whatever. It just revolves around doing a job well and performing a useful function in your life.
For sure.
I don't think a lot of people can say that. I think that if you're happy in what you're doing, you think that what you've done serves a purpose. And I'm not talking about religion or anything. I think just in itself, it's a purposeful job. I think that's a really important thing, and it's something that I'm kind of proud of. That's all.
You should be.
I definitely agree.
You should be.
And I mean, Brad, just before we end up on the podcast, we ask all of our guests this, but what would be one piece of life advice that you would give to people listening, whether they be young or old, about your experiences and things that you've been through? What would be a piece of advice that you would give everyone listening?
Yeah, wear sunscreen.
As a
Rowan
white,
can
as a
testify.
Fella, as a white fella, I can vouch for that.
That's the best advice we got yet. And Brad, also specifically to paramedics, because I know there's a lot of young paramedics out there as well. What advice would you give them?
Have a bit of fun while you're doing it. That seems to be something that's not out there anymore. Everyone's a bit too serious. Have a little bit of fun while you're at it.
Yeah, of course.
That's it. Because if you're too serious, you won't last that long in it. You know what I mean?
You need the workplace banter, and then when you're on site, of course,
anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, things have changed in that regard. It's not as much fun as it was.
Yeah.
The work's no different. You still do the same job.
Yeah, of course.
But there was a lot more fun around the station. I think that there was a lot more camaraderie. Because there's only one person that knows what an ambo's got to do, and that's another ambo.
That's true.
It's the same with police. I mean, the only person who understands what a policeman does is another policeman.
Exactly.
That's become, I think, a little bit neglected. But I'm not doing it now.
Of course. Good experience, though.
Yeah, I think I dodged a bullet recently. This is this last year, like right now, it must be horrendous.
Oh, it would be.
I can't with COVID.
Yeah, having to wear PPE on every job, and I experienced that when the COVID thing kicked off. And it must be just horrendous now. Must be more difficult now.
Of course.
Yeah. Different world. It's a different world.
It is a completely different world. Well, Brad, it's been great having you on, mate. And I'm sure you've given people so much more insight and perspective as to how really difficult it is being a paramedic. I mean, it is not an easy job. So massive respect to you, Brad.
Cool. Oh, I hope to meet you someday, Patrick.
Oh, I would absolutely love to, mate.
You will. But just from us, I'd like to say thank you. And I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people want to say thank you to all you guys too. You're doing God's work.
You are indeed.
God's work.
God's work.
Saving lives.
God's work is working now.
This is going to be interesting. I mean, on YouTube. I didn't know this was going to be on YouTube.
There you go, Brad.
The whole world can see you now, Brad.
Oh, okay. I don't have a footprint.
You might start having one.
No, I don't even do Facebook. I don't even know what I only found out the other day there was a word called a meme. I don't even know what a meme is.
My grandparents know what memes are. What are you doing, Brad?
Must go and buy some.
No, Brad. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you guys next week for another episode of Taking It Easy. So take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Take care. Cheers, Brad.